Following a week of thrashing politicians and commentators in the mainstream media, RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch appeared at a rally in London this weekend. And true to form, Mick Lynch gave a barnstorming speech.
The super rich are getting richer and richer year after year. The workers are getting poorer year on year. And what do we say? We refuse to be poor anymore. We can't afford to give you a pay rise. I've never heard such a load of nonsense in all my life. These men and women from Mighty. We've taken Mighty on at St Pancras. We've taken them on in King's Cross. We'll take them on in Paddington. We'll take them on anywhere that they come onto the railway. Because this is the method of super exploitation. Outsourcing is the biggest evil in the workplace in this country. You don't have to be a social scientist to work out who's getting these poor contracts. The black people, the migrant people, the people from minorities are suffering disproportionately. And we've got to stand up and say no to that structural racism. Keir Starmer and others, they're hesitating. I don't know why they're hesitating. If he could draw a crowd like this with what he says, he'd be doing well. He must win, but we've got to push him and persuade him to get into a position where he's in the front rank with you, all of you, helping us, assisting with us, identifying with our causes, identifying with equality in the workplace, identifying with unity. We are a rainbow. We come from all over the world, and everyone is welcome in this country and wants to earn their living. Through our movement, we bring everyone together in the workplace, in our communities, in our churches, our temples, our mosques, wherever we are active. We bring unity. We play sport together. We love one another. So I'm telling the employers now and the government, we will negotiate, but we will not surrender. No compulsory redundancies, agreed terms and conditions, and a pay rise that suits the cost of living crisis. Those are simple demands. Give it to us, or there'll be more strike action through the summer. So let's campaign, let's fight, let's win.
Mick Lynch is so confident, not because he's had any special media training, but because he knows what he stands for. He knows who he stands for. He's been doing it all his life since he was a blacklisted construction worker, then working on Eurostar in the 90s. He's been standing up for something called the working class. And where politicians think that's just one group of workers pitted off against another, he knows he stands for the vast majority of humanity, people who want to live and, as he said, love freely, people who don't want to be oppressed and exploited. His reference to Mighty in that speech is about another set of striking workers who joined his rally. They're from St George's Hospital in Tooting, mostly ethnic minority workers, and their dispute is with the outsourcing giant Mighty over pay and conditions. They're demanding that their contract should be brought back in-house at the hospital. So, at a moment when the government thinks racism will win it votes, deporting desperate refugees to Rwanda, here's the real alternative. A politics of solidarity, opposing every form of exploitation and oppression because we win together or we're divided and we lose. This, not just flag waving and jingoism, this is the greatest tradition of the British working class, and it can terrify the powerful. Here's a worker, Mick Lynch, who knows what it is to be shoved around and abused. So with passionate fury, he hates structural racism, and he says nobody is illegal. Ash, Mick Lynch stood in front of an RMT banner with pictures of James Connolly, the Irish anti-colonial revolutionary socialist, and Claudia Jones, the black communist and mother of the Notting Hill Carnival. In culture war Britain, isn't that supposed to be impossible?
Yes, I believe Nadine Dorries' brain is exploding right now. There's so much to say about Mick Lynch, so I'm going to try and order my thoughts in a way that makes sense, but I get a bit excited and start stumbling over myself. But let's start with his vision of who the working class are. Because one of the things about how culture wars operate is that it presents different identity categories as mutually exclusive. So you can be Black, brown, cosmopolitan, pro-BLM, or you can be white working class. Now, what both of those things do is they take structural positions, which are shaped by your position within the economy, within the body politic, how you're treated by institutions, and it transforms it into identity, something which is primarily about you rather than the society you live in. And the second thing it does, particularly with the formulation of white working class, is that's not a way of talking about working class people who happen to be white. It's a way of stripping class content from even the label of working class, because you turn it into almost a minority ethnic status. So by doing that kind of culture war formulation and by opposing these groups, you restrict their power. You take away their power. You take away the analysis of class from race, and you take away the analysis of race from class, and you present to mutually oppositional groups who actually have very shared interests. Now, I hear what you're saying, which is, this is the best tradition of the British working class. I would say it's the best tradition, sure, but it's not the only one. You, of course, had dockers for Enoch after Enoch Powell's notorious Rivers of Blood speech. You had some sections of the trade union movement coming out and marching for Enoch Powell. You also had sections of the trade union movement organising under the banner British Jobs for British Workers. So there are elements of the trade union movement where, yes, the logic of nationalism and indeed racism was embraced, because the promise of racism was that it would deliver better conditions for white working class people at the expense of the black, brown, and migrant working class. So that is also a British tradition, which Mick Lynch, by standing in front of that banner of James Connolly and Claudia Jones, by talking about We Are a Rainbow, by observing that the worst contracts are going to go to black, brown, and migrant workers, by saying anyone who wants to come here is welcome, no human is illegal, is a repudiation of that culture war opposition between the white working class and, woke BLM, black, brown, cosmopolitan, but it's also a repudiation of that racist tradition which has existed within the trade union movement. And I've got to say, it's something which I find incredibly moving. Like my grandma and my mum, when they came back to this country, which was in the early 70s, they subsequently became active in the trade union movement. The reason why I say came back to this country is that my grandma came to this country in the early 50s, then went and lived abroad for a bit, and then they came back after she separated from my grandfather. And they became active within the trade union movement. And it was a fight. It was a fight to have Black and Asian representation and to organize within the trade union movement against racism. It was such a huge fight. And to see someone like Mick Lynch, who is the most popular left-wing person in the country at the moment. I mean, he's got the kind of approval ratings that Keir Starmer would absolutely kill for. To see somebody who is white, is bald, speaks with a Cockney accent, standing up so vociferously for anti-racism, and more importantly, not leaving it as a kind of identity politics sideshow, but putting it front and center and integrating it within a class analysis, I find so moving, because for me personally, it allows me to sort of reflect back on some things my mum, my grandma told me, and just think, actually, there has been progress, there has been change. And while, yes, the Conservative Party in this country is trying to, take us backwards into feudalism, there are sections of the left and, huge swathes of the trade union movement, which has learned and grown and progressed and become better. And I think that Mick Lynch does embody the very best of those working class traditions in his repudiation of the worst.
There is nothing more beautiful than solidarity when we choose to construct our interests, not through loyalties to those above us in hierarchies, but by linking arms with others oppressed and exploited and dreaming together of a different kind of world.
All of us here at Novara Media are working harder than ever to keep scrutinising establishment politicians and the media barons who protect them. We don't have billionaire funders. We don't have advertising partnerships. We're funded entirely by you. If you've ever thought about supporting us, now's the time to go to novaramedia.com/support and donate anything you can from just £1 per month. Defy the corporate media. Join our monthly supporters and help build our supporter base to 10,000 strong.